If you've been on the internet for the last few years, you might have heard of mewing before. It's basically where people tell you to put your tongue in a certain posture and put your chin in a certain posture, and it's supposed to transform your jawline and make you have this nice chiseled looking face. But there's a good chance, if you've just watched some TikTok videos on it and been copying that you're probably mewing wrong. So mewing was invented by a guy named Dr. John Mew. He is actually this orthodontist, or what people call this braces doctor, and he invented a specific form of dentistry called orthotropics. It basically involves fixing your jaw musculature, so your tongue muscles, your cheek muscles, your lip muscles, to basically help your jaw grow and expand in the right direction. So it's not just about having a chiseled, nice looking jawline. It's actually about proper facial growth. And we're gonna get into why that is way more important than just looking good, for not just also looking good, but also your actual health. So how does the position and strength of your certain muscles in your face determine how your face is gonna grow? So again, talking about Dr. John Mew, he's basically the inventor of this. So he was this British orthodontist. Orthodontists typically will just focus on straightening teeth. They try to get teeth in the right position, try to get teeth to look good. But orthodontists have some problems. Not all of them. I'm not saying anything against orthodontists, but the actual concept of just straightening your teeth is very limited. So Dr. Mew invented a concept called orthotropics, which now a lot of people call forwardontics. And instead of just straightening your teeth in the right position, it involves growing your jaw into the right position, because when your jaw grows in the right position, then your teeth will naturally come in the right place. And the best part about this is that it will actually look better than traditional orthodontics. Now, this has been a major discussion for traditional orthodontists for many years, and there's been a lot of controversy behind this. And as a result, you know, one thing about controversy is a lot of people like to get involved and view it. And this is why it's gotten so popular online and why so many people have coined the term mewing. But the thing with mewing is it isn't just some magical hack that's supposed to fix your face and fix your jawline overnight. It's actually involving proper mouth and tongue posture, where if you do it from a very young age, it will ideally grow your face in the right direction. And now, I'm not gonna go into detail here, but a lot of times this simply mewing is not enough, even at a young age, to guarantee your face grows in the right direction. And I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit here, just so you can really understand how this all kind of came into place. So back in the day, our ancestors, if you look at their skulls, they all had very straight teeth and they had very wide jaws. Even their wisdom teeth, their third molars, where people typically have to get their wisdom teeth taken out because they're impacted or they just don't come in the right position. Our ancestors, all their skulls, their wisdom teeth all came in the right place. So magically, they had very straight teeth, they had very wide jaws, and they didn't even need an orthodontist to straighten them. So the question really becomes, why have our jaws gotten smaller? Now, I made a separate video kind of going into detail about this, so I'm putting that link in the description below if you want to learn more about that. But essentially, it was a change in a few things. It was a change in our diet, a change in our living habits, and lastly, a change in our breathing patterns. So what happened was, instead of living outdoors, we started moving towards living indoors. Now, first off, I want to say that I'm a big fan of living indoors, but the problem with that is we start getting a lot more dust and start getting all this buildup of stuff we're not really used to, which promotes a lot more allergies. When we have allergies, then that kind of changes our breathing patterns, because it gets a lot harder to breathe through our nose, because our nose gets a lot more stuffy. This leads us to start being mouth breathers, where we start breathing in and out of our mouth instead of our nose, and as a result, our mouth is always open, our jaw is always hanging open. And with our jaw always hanging open, our face grows in that elongated direction. It stays narrow because our cheeks will constrict everything. Whereas ideally, we'd want to be breathing in and out of our nose, where our lips are closed and our tongue is touching the roof of our mouth. And this is what's considered proper mouth posture, because now you have a stimulus for your jaw to grow, where instead of your cheeks keeping everything constricted and your face growing in that elongated direction, now with your mouth closed and that tongue against the roof of the mouth, it's gonna force that jaw to start growing wide and forward, because that jaw will start to grow in the shape of your tongue. Now, you might be thinking, well, my tongue is just touching the roof of my mouth, so how is the bottom of my jaw growing? Well, you have this maxilla and the mandible. Typically, the maxilla is what restricts the mandible. So if your tongue is resting against the roof of your mouth, which is where your maxilla is, and your maxilla is growing wider and forward, it's going to not restrict the mandible. Now the mandible is going to be able to grow wide and forward to match the maxilla. So that's kind of two parts of what changed. You know, us living indoors, us getting all these allergies and dust, and us becoming more mouth breathers, which kind of constricted our face. The other thing that changed is our diet. So around 1,000 years ago, we started industrialization, where our grain started getting refined and a lot of our foods became less chewy. Chewy in a sense where we don't have to chew it as much. So our ancestors, if you look at records, they used to chew food for about 4 hours a day. So imagine spending 4 hours out of your day chewing your food. Nowadays, if I told someone I had 4 hours to chew my food, they would probably look at me like I'm crazy and tell me I need to find a different hobby. But that's what happened. Our diets changed. We started chewing food a lot less. And this, again, provided less of a stimulus for our jaws to grow. So now we're chewing our food a lot less. We're having more allergies and we're using our mouth to breathe. And also, we're having this bad oral posture where our mouth is always open instead of our mouth closed. All of these things kind of led to some changes and led to our jaws getting smaller. Now, this was a brief summary, and if you want to learn more in detail, again, check out that video in the description below. Now, I talked a lot about proper oral posture. So what exactly is this proper oral posture, which is, in other words, considered mewing? So part of it involves your tongue. You want your tongue to be touching the roof of your mouth, not just the tip of your tongue, but also the middle and back part of your tongue. Now, when your tongue is touching the roof of the mouth, you don't want to force it to be there. It should be natural. And it should kind of feel like a suction, where your tongue is basically suction against the roof of the mouth. This is really important, especially as your jaw is still developing, because we don't need a heavy force for us to manipulate our bone and for our bone to grow wider and forward. For example, going back to braces, you're moving teeth through bone. Do you think that those braces wires or the Invisalign is drastically moving your teeth and putting a ton of pressure to move it in the right place? No, it's using very, very light pressure over a long period of time. That's what we need to move our jaw and to move our teeth through bone. And that's exactly what our tongue is doing when it's resting against the roof of our mouth, especially from an early age. The other aspects of proper oral posture is our lips should be closed. And then also, our teeth should be slightly touching. You might wonder, why should our teeth be touching? You might have been told from mewing experts that your teeth should be not touching, that your teeth should be apart. This is a very common misconception. The reason your teeth should be touching, especially from an early age, is, well, actually two things. One is premature contacts, and the second has to do with the position of your TMJ, or your jaw joint. Now we'll start with the second one. So your TMJ, or your jaw joint, is basically this ball and this kind of socket. And anytime you open or you chew or talk, it's gonna move. Now, not only does it rotate, it also moves forward and back. So when you open your mouth, this condyle, or the bottom part of this TMJ joint, will move forward. It won't just rotate down, it'll also physically move forward. So I kind of made a diagram here to help explain. So this is a depiction of your jaw joint. So imagine your ear is here, and this is your jaw joint. So like you're looking at the side of my face right here. As you open, this condyle, or the bottom part of that jaw joint, will move forward. So now you can see in the right image, it's kind of moving forward. Because again, let's say your ear is on the right side of this image, but your mouth is on the left side of this image. So your mouth is here, or your mouth is here, depending on which image you're looking at. So if this moves forward, it's not a big deal because that's what it's meant to do. But if you have bad oral posture, where your mouth is always open, instead of regularly being closed, now your condyle is constantly in this position. It's not always going to be in this position where we want it. And because it's in this position, because your teeth are not touching, then it will kind of get restructured, where instead of this being the new normal, this will become the new normal. And here's a problem, because now once you start to chew food or actually close your mouth and touch your teeth together, you can get a lot of pain. because this has to move back when you close your teeth. And if this tries to move back, it's not going to have enough space in this disc like this image. It's going to try to go back into the bone like this, and it's going to be painful. And this is why so many people have TMJ symptoms, or that TMJ pain. You might have heard of something like a bite splint or a night guard. This is made for people who grind or clench their teeth and people who have a lot of jaw pain. And this is why, because that bite splint is basically a thicker retainer to keep your mouth open and keep those teeth apart. And the reason that's made is because anytime you close your mouth and touch those teeth together, especially when you're grinding, it's going to be very painful because this jaw joint is trying to go back into this bone, and it's going to cause a lot of inflammation. So that night guard that's made is meant to keep your teeth apart and keep this condyle forward so that it's staying in the right place. Now, that being said, I think bite guards are great because they're really good at fixing the symptoms. Now, keep in mind, there I said the symptoms, not the actual problem, because it's going to keep that condyle forward, get people out of pain, which that's what people want. They want to be out of pain. But it's not going to fix the real problem. The real problem is growing up, they had that open mouth posture where that condyle was forward. And this is why it's so important to grow up with that proper oral posture where your teeth are touching and not super hard. Like, I'm not telling you to clench, but they should be slightly touching so that condyle is in the correct position. And people who grow up with this proper oral posture are much less likely to have these TMJ issues and to grind or clench their teeth. And the second aspect of keeping your teeth together growing up is premature contact. So anytime your teeth are not touching something, they tend to look for something to touch. An example of this is when you take your tooth out, let's say you get a tooth extracted, the teeth that surround that missing space tend to drift and try to fill in that missing space. So that tooth that normally bites on that tooth that got taken out will try to hyper-erupt and it'll start to grow into that missing space. The teeth that surround that missing space will sort of drift and kind of fill that missing space. This doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen to some people. It kind of depends on the person. So I don't want to get too technical on this, but this happens to a lot of people when they lose a tooth. So let's say someone is growing up with that open mouth posture where their teeth are not touching. Then some teeth will sort of hyper-erupt and try to find certain teeth to touch. What ends up happening is as you start chewing your food and as your teeth start coming together, your bite isn't going to be even because some teeth are going to be hitting harder than others. Ideally, we have an even bite where we're hitting harder with our back molars, and we're hitting lighter with our front incisors. But instead, if you're growing up with your teeth slightly touching, your teeth will kind of fill in the gaps. They will find the right places to bite, and they will kind of distribute their forces evenly. And this especially happens if you chew evenly on both sides. And that comes back to the proper oral posture, where your lips are closed, your tongue is against the roof of the mouth, your teeth are slightly touching at all times, and then when you're chewing your food, you're chewing with your mouth closed and chewing evenly on both sides. Now, with that all being said, this is why I think that mewing alone, like having this proper oral posture alone, is still not enough to guarantee someone's jaw grows in the right direction and make sure that their teeth all come in the right direction. And the reason is because so many other things have changed. Our diet has changed and our lifestyle has changed. No one's chewing their food 4 hours a day. No one's chewing hard foods like we used to. And a lot of people are surrounded by these allergies and struggle breathing through their nose and keeping this correct mouth posture at all times. So we're not getting as much of a stimulus as our ancestors did for our jaws to grow, even if we have this correct mouth posture. This is why things like a forwardontist or an orthotropist like Dr. John Mew, how he practices, this is why these fields are so important. Because what these fields do is they create actual appliances that kids will wear at an early age that will force them to engage their jaw muscles, their tongue muscles, and their lip muscles and keep them in the correct position. And this will further reinforce growing their jaw in the right position. If someone were to basically copy exactly what our ancestors did, then they would probably have a very wide and forward growing jaw with their teeth all in the right place. But not many people are going to do that. This is why fields like an orthotropist or a forwardontist are so important. Now, what are the other benefits of mewing or having this proper oral posture where your jaw grows forward and wide. We talked about how it's better for your face and how it ends up looking better than what a traditional orthodontics would do, which is just straightening the teeth, but now you're actually correcting the face and fixing the jawline and also at the same time getting the teeth in the right place. I talked before at the beginning of the video of how this is actually better for your overall health. And the reason for that has to do a lot with your breathing, because when your jaw grows forward and wide, then you're also developing your breathing tubes or your airway. Because what we're finding now is a lot of traditional orthodontics where it pulls the teeth in the right position and kind of pulling them back, it kind of restricts the airway. Because a lot of times what they do is narrow the arch. So they try to create enough space. Sometimes they will extract teeth to create enough space to get teeth in the right position to make them look straight, and kind of masking any actual skeletal problems that people have. This will look good, people's smiles will look good, but it can really damage the airway. It can make it harder for people to breathe, especially when they are sleeping, and it can make them more likely to have sleep apnea because their breathing tubes are smaller. It can even make them more likely to snore because, again, they have a more restricted airflow. And this in turn can lead to a lot of developmental problems because when you're not breathing well, you're not sleeping well, your brain's not getting enough oxygen, you can be more likely to have things like ADHD or stunted growth or struggle in school, etc. Now, with that being said, do I think that mewing and having this proper oral posture is going to be beneficial later in life, like after you hit puberty and after your jaw's already developed? Well, I'll be honest, it's going to be way less beneficial than if you were to do it from a very early age. But at the same time, it still will have a lot of benefits. There are a ton of benefits from simply breathing through your nose that you do not get from breathing through your mouth, and having proper oral posture will help enforce that. And I'm going to put a different link in the description below if you want to learn more about the benefits of nasal breathing. I'm not going to get into all of them in this video because I already talked so much about mewing and I don't want to bore you too much. But also improving your tongue posture and your overall mouth posture can actually fix your head posture. Because keep in mind, your tongue is connected to your jaw, your face, and also your neck. So people who grow up as mouth breathers, they tend to have this forward head posture because their jaw is always hanging open. It tends to pull their head forward and their head starts to fall forward and get this forward head posture. Whereas people who breathe in and out of their nose and they have this proper mouth posture where their mouth is closed and their tongue is against the roof of the mouth, their head tends to be back and upright with their spine. Now, part of this also has to do with airway problems because people who have a restricted airway tend to tilt their head up. And the reason is because when you tilt your head up, it opens up the airway. For example, in CPR, when we're giving rescue breaths, we are taught to tilt that head up or that chin up before we give those rescue breaths. And that's because it helps open up the airway. So even if you are older, like you're in your 20s or 30s, and you start practicing this mewing or this correct mouth position at that age, it's still going to benefit you in those ways. And I think anything that benefits your sleep and your breathing and your overall posture is going to be very, very beneficial no matter when you do in life. The thing to remember is that mewing is not just some quick fix, but it's also not a gimmick, especially if you do it correctly. And if you follow the instructions I talked about proper mouth posture, then it can really have some benefits if you do it for a long time. Now, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below. If you want to learn more about similar concepts like this or go into more detail, again, check out some of the other videos I made in my page. I talk a lot about this type of stuff, so you might find one of them interesting. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have you ever wondered how the dentist keeps you comfortable during your procedures? And did you know that there's different types of anesthesia? In this video, I'm going to go over 6 different types of anesthesia at the dentist. I'm going to go over how they work and which one might be the best one for you. So the 6 types are: 1, topical anesthesia; number 2, local numbing;